Hey, wake up, wake up. It's Monday, July 8th. Damon Bruce, Larry Krueger. Awesome to have you here. Larry, it's our last week without actual football happening on a football field. 8 days until rookies report to training camp. And thank goodness, because these lean times, boy, they're all around us right now. How you doing, pal?
Doing great, doing great. Hope everybody had a terrific weekend. Man, it was warm weekend out here in the creek. But yeah, it should remind us that we're getting ready for training camp, where there will be no two-a-days, but we will be in Santa Clara reporting on very hot practices. So got to get ready for the heat, and then it wouldn't be a full weekend if we didn't have Brandon Aiyuk on social media.
Yeah, Mike is all over
threatening to leave the 49ers.
Mike Baker saying another week of BA drama ahead, I'm sure. Yeah, it feels like it's already underway, and we'll get to that in just a second. Like, to me, this is the week that, like, the football season officially kind of begins. That training camp is what matters to me. It's a personal choice, right? Like, I know the league year actually started months ago. You get the NFL draft, you get free agency. A lot of people mark that as, okay, it's the new year now. To me, that's still all off season, getting ready for this moment. Like, once training camp gets underway, Larry, that's the green flag. I mean, that means we're basically racing again.
No question. I mean, as soon as this team gets together for camp, I mean, there'll be no shortage of topics. Suddenly it's position battles and injuries and holdouts and trade rumors and, pecking order. The one thing about football, too, is that, you think of it as a daily sport because we're immersed in it pretty much daily, but it's actually kind of a sport where they stay with what they go with. Most teams do, at least. And then as far as personnel and lineups, and then they make, a gigantic evaluation, and a lot of times that evaluation comes at the end of the year. And you saw it last year. The Niners went into their offseason. They made an evaluation on Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. They decided Brock Purdy was their guy. And the rest of the offseason was just about, saying and doing the right things to facilitate the exit for Trey Lance. Well, the same thing, can be said this year as far as, we don't know exactly what the storylines are going to be, and who knows? Maybe the Niners evaluated that Cam Latu is their second best tight end, or maybe they evaluated that Cam Latu is not going to be on the roster at all. But we'll see when this team reconvenes and we see the team on the field and the ones and the twos and the threes and the depth chart plays itself out in real time. We'll see what their evaluations were. They don't have to give them to us. They can just kind of speak through their depth chart, and many teams do. So those first practices are always pretty interesting because usually there's two or three guys starting that were like, whoa, I didn't realize that guy's the starter. And that's kind of the way it goes right now. And that could be the spot. That could be the story. 5, 6, 7 different spots on this roster this summer.
Yeah, there could be a handful of spots, but it feels like they're going to be, more on the edge of the back of the roster battles than anyone really being threatened for their starting position outside of, like, center right guard. That feels like it could be up for grabs there. But I think
who's the starting free safety?
And there you go. There's your other spot on this defense that feels like it's up for grabs right now. But the 49ers are very settled. I mean, they really are. They're a team that has the guys where they want them, and it's pretty much plug and play. I don't think there's going to be an awful lot of change or dramatic battles to really even get excited about. I know that we'll sell them as we're watching them, but I don't think there's.
I think there'll be a handful.
A lot of drama on the roster.
Right guard, free safety, nickel, defensive tackle, starting defensive end, inside linebacker next to Fred Warner. Wide receiver if there's no Aiyuk, of course. Number 2 tight end, wide open. I think there's going to be, for a team that went to the Super Bowl, I think there's going to be some pretty good camp competition.
Well, give it to us. Give it to us. We can't have enough to talk about. We're kind of inventing things to talk about. Larry threatened me before we came on air with a list of 5 possible trades for Brock Purdy. That's where we are in this summer. 5 possible trades for Brock Purdy. So we'll get into that just for giggles. I think a little bit later on, or maybe there's something out there that it's just an offer you can't refuse, Larry. We'll get to it in a minute. But the Brandon Aiyuk, the New York Post, which is always good at having the most dramatic headline possible. The New York Post says Brandon Aiyuk drama hits tipping point. No, this is just the latest train car passing on the locomotive of this conversation, which never stops running. Brandon Aiyuk promoted Washington Commanders practice film on his TikTok.
Right.
So, like, what is that supposed to do?
Why?
Supposed to make the 49ers like
what's the purpose?
Now he's serious. It feels like someone has a slow documentary if they've gone into the editing bay and figured out what they actually got on film here. So they're like, Brandon, we need a little something for this 8-minute run of the documentary. Make it post some commander practice footage or something to keep this conversation going. He really likes his attention, Larry. He's milking this cow for all the attention it will get him. And, one of my favorite things about Brandon Aiyuk was just really a lunch pail guy, hard worker, not a diva, but he's giving into some diva tendencies here this offseason, isn't he?
Well, I mean, it's just he has no moves. It's sad. He has no moves to play. The Niners have the leverage. They can keep him for not just this year. They can keep him for 3 years. Keep him this year, next year, the year after. So he doesn't have the ability to go anywhere. So all he does is have the ability to talk. But and some of it is like, oh, that's, Aiyuk wants a deal, this and that. He's reminding everybody. At some point, though, I got to think that he's going to hit the tilting point. He went on TikTok and posted a picture from Washington Commanders practice, which has to be against the rules. I mean, I can't imagine that is that. I mean, obviously he's not trying to get a competitive advantage on the Commanders, but the league doesn't necessarily know that. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. Do the 49ers take a penalty here? I mean, the 49ers, he's a member of the 49ers.
Right. But
who gets penalized here?
How does he get access to another team's training camp footage?
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's also in one swoop move. He's outing. He got it from Jaden Daniel. He got it from the Commanders quarterback.
It's easy to think that, but we don't know that. It's easy.
No, we don't know that. But I mean, it's not a court of law or anything. But I'm just saying it's pretty obvious he got it from Jaden Daniels. And then the question then is, is he getting Daniels in trouble? Probably is. I don't think you're supposed to. I don't think Jaden Daniels is supposed to be handing, Brandon Aiyuk, somebody on another team. I mean, in the Pivot podcast, I forget who it was. If it was Fred Taylor, who seemed like the smart guy there, who's like, don't be at your next place before you're at your next place. Don't be at your next gig before you're at your next gig. And that's kind of where it looks like Brandon Aiyuk is right now. It's like he's emotionally and mentally at his next gig. But, oh, yeah, by the way, contractually and officially, you're still with us over here, us schleps over here at the Niners. So you may want to pipe down on the TikTok, or somebody could get fined, yourself, the Niners. But also at some point, if you're the Niners, you could just be like, you know what, enough. I'm done. What's their tipping point? That would be my question. We know Aiyuk's tight with Jaden Daniels. We know that their boy's going back to ASU. And so there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, come on, that's just life. But, and Aiyuk has stated his first choice is to play with the 49ers, but he also stated he'd like to play with the Commanders and he wouldn't mind playing with the Steelers. And looks like he's fantasizing about being in Washington with Daniels. And it's like, it's pretty obvious that Aiyuk is saying loudly, I want my price at all costs. And he doesn't care if the Niners have cap issues. He doesn't care if they're a winning team. He doesn't believe in a hometown discount. He's prioritizing getting the biggest bag over all else. And the Niners have other priorities. And, he's praised Daniels. He's called him a winner, says he can make any throw. He literally went on that Pivot podcast and said that Jaden Daniels is the quarterback that can help me take my game to the next level.
Which is just absurd on its face. He's a rookie. How about this? There's also this possibility. Jaden Daniels can't play professional football. We'll find out. Okay, we're going to find out. But there have been guys with greater resumes and more upside drafted into the NFL than Jaden Daniels has, and they haven't done anything. He's a very interesting prospect. There's no doubt about it. I'm not predicting doom and gloom, but there's nothing that proves that you can play in this league until you play in this league. And the one thing Jaden Daniels hasn't done a lick of is play in this league. So for Brandon Aiyuk to say that, the guy who's never done anything in this league is the guy who can take me to the next level, that right there lets you know he's not serious about what he's saying. He can't even believe that.
Well, no, he could. I mean, he's not talking about a player that he's never played with. He's talked about a player that he has played with. So he feels like he knows that player.
Together at ASU. And then he transferred.
But I mean, he feels like he knows that player. I mean, the guy was awesome this last year, but he, albeit at LSU. I'll give him the fact that the guy's a good young quarterback. I think Jaden Daniels is a good young quarterback. I wouldn't debate him on that. But if and Aiyuk's a damn good wide receiver. And I think to my eye, he should be the perfect wide receiver for the 49ers. He doesn't seem like he's a diva, doesn't demand the ball, doesn't hold court at his locker every week, saying, what about me? What about me? What about me? And then the Niners are a running football team, and he blocks as well downfield as almost any wide receiver that's come down the pike in the last 15, 20 years. So he's a damn good wide receiver, and I think he's a perfect scheme fit for the 49ers. But if he wants to go to DC and play with the Commanders, then you know what? Call up Adam Peters, make a really good deal, and send him there. I got no problem with that. I know other people would say, no, send him to New England, banish him to some AFC post where he's for sure to lose. Okay, you could do that.
The only I would send him, the only place that I would send him is to be the team that gave the best return. And I think that going public with we're trading Brandon Aiyuk brings more offers than just from the Commanders or New England. I mean, the 49ers don't owe Brandon Aiyuk anything, especially if he's kicking the table saying, get me out of here.
They don't owe him anything, but it is a league where players do observe how you treat players, and if people feel like the Niners treated him badly, that could have negative pushback from players in a free agency league.
I just don't think that the Niners owe it to themselves to really not worry about that. The Niners' reputation for doing business with players in this league is not a bad reputation or one that they need to step up to the podium and start defending. They got a great reputation because Brandon Aiyuk's got sour grapes over his paycheck is something that I think is, most players can process what's going on here. If they make that decision, it's time to trade him. They owe it to the organization to make the best possible trade, not to Brandon Aiyuk to send him to the one team that has the player that he says can take his game to the next level. Totally. That's what's important here. So,
but there's other factors, and this we're talking about a receiver who's going to make a lot of money, and we're also talking about July. So who's got cap room to spare in July? That's really, we could talk all day about what team and this and that. The Commanders have $37 million under the cap, and their projected cap space this year is going to be like $77.2 million that they say is projected to be available.
By the way, Larry,
for 2025, I should say. $37 million this year, $77 million available next year. So they've got the cap room to take them on if they want.
Larry, your video is totally frozen with your eyes closed, so it looks like you're nodding off and sleeping right now. Keep talking so we know you're still there and still awake, but your video has come and gone, and if you want to You're like click out and click back in. Either that or you're breathing out your third eyelid. Oh, there he is.
There we go.
He's back, folks.
I was on it's funny. It's you pull into a different screen for a second, and all of a sudden you freeze up. I didn't hit my mouse.
Your camera is about to hold out. Your camera's considering a holdout, or maybe it wants a trade to a content creator in Washington or something like that.
It said, hey, you know what? You spent all this money on me. Use me correctly. But, if you look at the Commanders have, Jonathan Allen, who, supposedly is available. And it's because they've thrown big money at Deron Payne, and, he's got $90 million. Allen makes 4 years, $72 million that he signed in 2021. So they're saying that he's available. Emmanuel Forbes could be available. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Luke McCaffrey. These guys are all would be very attractive to the 49ers. At this point,
I mean, you're not adding Brandon Aiyuk to subtract Terry McLaurin, though. You know what I mean? Like, that guy's not going anywhere.
Well, you never know. I mean, it depends. I mean, he is the receiver that makes big bucks. I mean, he doesn't make biggest bucks like Aiyuk wants to make, but he's making 15, 16, 17 in that range. So he's making big bucks too. I'll say this. I mean, for the 49ers perspective, the Niners have drafted Pearsall. They've drafted Cowing. They have JJ. They still have Debo. You've got a couple other young receivers there. I'd be willing to take Jonathan Allen, a conditional pick and their receiver of choice. You want to send me McLaurin? I'll take McLaurin. You want to send me Jahan Dotson? I'll take Jahan Dotson. You want to send me McCaffrey's brother? I'll take McCaffrey's brother. And I want a conditional pick, Jonathan Allen, and a receiver. If you meet my price, you give me, because I mean, think about it this way. I think Luke McCaffrey is going to be a decent receiver. I don't think he's Aiyuk, but I think he's going to be a decent receiver. I think Jahan Dotson has already kind of shown that he's got really good ball skills. And, there's a reason he was a mid-first round pick. And then McLaurin, I would say, is a top 20 NFL receiver right now. He's just a little bit on the older side. As long as you got, Jonathan Allen and a conditional pick, any of those receivers would be fine. Just any one receiver to replace Aiyuk. But I get no problem moving off of Aiyuk. I really don't. I've grown weary of the whole thing. It's if you really think about it logically, the last move that the Niners should make is the move that Aiyuk wants to make, which is pay him $30 million. That's the last move they ought to make. They got a deep wide receiver core in a league that has incredibly deep crops of wide receiver coming out every year in free agency and the draft. You don't need to spend that kind of money on a wide receiver. Plus, if you play Aiyuk on the 5th-year option and he plays at $14 million, is he going to be pissed? Sure. But what if Debo outperforms him? Then at the end of the year, you keep Debo and you move off of Aiyuk. So, and Debo looks like he's working pretty hard. And Debo's had a very, very good career. So,
if off-season I'm running on a treadmill videos equal NFL success, the 49ers are going undefeated because, good God.
Well, it's not just a treadmill. I mean, he's obviously leaned out. He's running routes. He's putting in the work.
Yeah, no,
his body looks good.
A slight on this guy. He looks fantastic right now. And Debo, who, famously said, I'm never coming into camp out of shape again. Since he said that, he's been a man of his word. That's for sure. So
what if he plays great? I mean, here's the thing. As soon as you sign Aiyuk to this monster deal that he covets, the Debo Samuel era is over. So what if you really like Debo? What if you think Debo might have a career year? What if you're of the belief that Debo's working out harder than Aiyuk and might have the better year this year? And what if he does? Or what if Cowing becomes a star? Or what if Pearsall becomes a star? All of your flexibility at wide receiver is gone as soon as you sign Aiyuk to that big money long-term deal. So I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I think 5th-year option looks pretty good to me. And I'm sure the Niners are looking at that thing saying the same damn thing. So if the 5th-year option looks pretty good, yeah, you could create some cap room you could create, $10 million of cap room in this season if you moved Aiyuk. So what? Who cares? You've already got the 6th most cap room in the sport right now. You've got plenty of cap room. I mean, it's always nice to create more. You could roll over more for Purdy's contract next year. But you see what I'm saying? It's like they need either Aiyuk to come out, and they need Aiyuk to play really well. Well, where's he gonna play better? Is if he's motivated playing on the 5th-year option, still hasn't gotten the big bag, and he's competing against Debo to see who stays and who goes, or you pay him more money than he's ever had before, and you take away his motivation, maybe coming off of a off season where he didn't even work as hard as he's worked in the past because he's doing podcasts and worried about his contract. So I don't know. Personally, I think he can push, but at some point, if he annoys the 49ers, they could just stonewall and just be like, you know what? Lose our number, show up for camp, or don't, but you'll be fined and you'll be paying those fines. I mean, I'll say this. It's pretty obvious that they're not going to alleviate his fines. I mean, if they are, I think they would have said it by now. And I don't think they are.
Maybe that's the last, bit of sugar they sprinkle on top of trying to get something done with him at the very last minute. Look, he's got 8 days until rookies report to training camp. A week after that, vets report. And not a single snap has been lost to this contract negotiation until that moment. I mean, I want this done by the time veterans report. I don't want him holding out a training camp. I don't want this lingering over the football team. And I don't think the 49ers do either. Again, I said this last week. I'm going to start this week saying it again. I think I'd put 2 contracts in front of him. One says, it might not be the $30 million that you want, but we're guaranteeing you generational wealth and over $100 million over a handful of years. This is guaranteed security that anyone in your family tree would have said yes to at any point in time in their entire lives. We hope that you say yes to it too. The other option is a Post-it note that says $14.5 million. And then on the back of it, it says, and then we'll franchise tag you. So what do you really want here? If we want you to be a 49er going forward, like, we can torture you with that. You have no recourse. You are a 49er until we say you're not a 49er, or you go ahead and you make that trade. You say, we're going to give you what you want. You're going to make the trade. So I guess there's 3 piles. Pile 1, you get what you want. Pile 2, lots of money, generational wealth, security, and a fabulous football team. Pile number 3 is you're still on a fabulous football team, but for $14.5 million in the year after that, you're franchise tagged and you have no real guarantee of anything. Don't hurt yourself. If I'm Brandon Aiyuk, I'm taking the big pile of money with a really good football team when the rubber hits the road. I really think he's that kind of guy who will do it. Like, I think this is a lot of peacocking, threatening that you might be interested in someone else, but you really want to stay in this marriage. He'd be crazy not to. He'd be crazy not to.
Like any marriage, you can only disrespect the spouse for so long before they bail, Yeah. So that's really it. I mean, it's just like, how much do the Niners feel disrespected? How much does Purdy feel disrespected? DeAndre Berry says Debo had 12 touchdowns last year. Aiyuk hasn't done that once. Debo had 17 in his contract year. Stop disrespecting Debo. Yeah, I kind of agree. We got this one from Third String All Pro.
Just based on, past results indicating what the future might look like. There's a very good chance Brandon, Aiyuk plays every game this season, and there's a very good chance that Debo misses 6 of them for whatever nick, ding, injury that seems to follow him, every other week. I love Debo too. If Debo were a never got hurt level player, there'd be nothing to discuss here, right? But he's not that guy.
I mean, you only have so many spots for receivers anyway. I mean, to me, it seems like as soon as they drafted Pearsall and Cowing, it was almost official that they were going to trade some wide receiver. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're going to cut all these guys. You're cutting everybody. You're going to cut Conley and Danny Gray and all the Ronnie Bell. You're cutting all these guys. All these guys are getting cut because you're typically going with 5 receivers. So you got Aiyuk and Debo and JJ and Pearsall and Cowing. So that's your receiver group. That means every other receiver that you have on your roster is cut. And that's some pretty good receivers there. I mean, that's Ronnie Bell, Chris Conley, Danny Gray, Trent Taylor, Tay Martin, Tariq Owens, all cut. And maybe that's the route they'll go. Trent Taylor's a little bit older. Danny Gray hasn't done it yet. But Conley was a valuable piece for them last year. Right. And so is Ronnie Bell.
We like those guys. No one here dislikes those guys. But the list of guys that you just read could also be said this: just a guy, just a guy, just a guy, just a guy, just a guy. I mean, that's a nice group of players there, but none of them have done anything that takes them to the level of hard to replace, much less irreplaceable. So
no, but it's an awful lot of players that you had good use for, that you invested
a lot of time, a lot of training, a lot of coaching.
I mean, Conley was very valuable for them on special teams last year.
He was.
I mean, we'll see what the way this thing goes, but I don't know. I'm at a point now where, you know what? I would take Luke McCaffrey and Jonathan Allen and just get down the road. I really would. I mean, I don't think Aiyuk is that special. I think he's a good receiver. I think he's a very good receiver. But I can make an argument that they have a greater need at defensive tackle. I mean, Javon Hargrave wasn't very good last year. Malik Collins is a total unknown. After that, you got Kevin Givens. I don't know what he's going to be. Jordan Elliott. I don't know. Kalia Davis. I don't know. T.Y. McGill. I don't know.
But I like those names, and those guys have done something in the league.
Okay, but I mean, I'm just saying, there's nobody great there. There's no Jonathan Allen there. Jonathan Allen would give the 49ers the best defensive front that they've had during this Shanahan Lynch era.
By the way, this is an unfair question, but what's the Jonathan Allen price tag? How hard is he to fit into any business?
Well, he signed for $72 million in 2021 over 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, I have to look it up. It's 15 million or something. It's less than Aiyuk. So, I mean, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, for what you're going to pay Aiyuk.
He's not a $20 million a year player yet. He's got $20 million a year talent.
Yeah. He's a big time talent on that front line, though. And I think they probably need somebody there more. We'll see. I mean, in an ideal world, they would have Aiyuk, but Aiyuk sounds it. You know, there's some people are gone before they're gone. You know, Aiyuk sounds like he's now in that camp. Like, I'm emotionally on another team before I'm actually on another team. That's what I'm getting out of this Pivot podcast. That's what I'm getting out of all this Jaden Daniels talk. That's what I'm getting out of this pictures of their practices. It's like he's emotionally moved on. I don't know if that's the smartest play, but that's what it seems like to me.
Well, it feels like that is the illusion he's trying to present. So the question is it an illusion or is it real? You know, because the only thing he has in negotiation going for him is his own TikTok account and whatever public outrage of support he can gin up with it. Like, that's it. He does not have leverage here. And the Niners know that. And I think he knows that. That's why he's being such a pain in the ass about this. And I just look, but by the time we get to, what is it, July 26th? Is that it? Or July, whenever it is. July 23rd. Thank you very much. When July 23rd happens, I want this to be done. I don't want to be talking about this on July 24th, Larry. I don't think you do either. I don't think the Niners do. And obviously, Brandon Aiyuk would like a new topic too.
Well, the leverage comes from, I mean, he doesn't have any pure leverage.
The leverage comes in the holdout. Which
the leverage comes
from him, there is no leverage.
Well, I think the leverage comes from the standpoint of, if you give, the Niners options are make him play on the 5th-year option or extend him. But making him play on the 5th-year option could turn him into an island unto himself in the locker room. So they're risking a little bit of Brandon Aiyuk locker room discontent. I don't know how mature or immature Brandon would be. I don't know how mature or immature his teammates would be. I don't
I
know.
just think
That's kind of an unknown, but
it's such a
that's the
veteran
risk.
locker room. I'm not worried about that. I'm not.
That's the
Obviously,
risk, though. You
you
just
don't
tell the
want
guy to sit there and play on the fifth year
right.
option. He's like pissed.
You don't want to powder. You don't want somebody, motherfucking the team, when the doors are closed to the locker room. Like, I get it. You don't want that. But at the same time, I really, here's the thing. The only thing I care about is winning a Super Bowl if I'm the 49ers. And, all your locker room harmony has gotten you nothing to this point. So I just think it's time to get this done. It's time to get this done. I don't want this to happen a minute into training camp. So I hope we're in the end game here, Larry. I mean, shame on everyone if we're still talking about this. It's week 3 of the NFL season and the holdout is, in full effect. Like, shame on.
I mean, get ready for it, man. Get ready for it, because the one thing that is abundantly clear is that both sides are dug in. So that's clear. I mean, it's absolutely clear. You would not be, it's July 8th. You would not be posting pictures of Commanders camp unless you had a sincere interest in being a commander. And
I'll give you that much. I'll give you that much.
And the 49ers, the ceiling's 35. Let's say the floor is 28, something like that. There was plenty of runway to get this thing done if they wanted to compromise. They clearly don't want to compromise. And they've got Brock Purdy's contract staring him in the face next year, and a roster full of deep players. They've already drafted a couple replacement receivers. I'm looking at their high-priced players and looking at Purdy's contract to be and thinking, okay, something's going to have to give somewhere. And you can crunch every number possible. The more you look at it, the more it looks like the two guys they might move off of to create that room are the receivers. Because they might move off of Debo and Aiyuk. May not even be an either or.
By the way,
that may be where they get their extra cap room is from the receivers.
You see this comment from 49er gang 916, third up from the bottom. If you're at the bottom, it's 49er gang 916. Let me find this again. Oh, it scrolled right past me. Did I lose it already? But yeah, here it is. There it is. I wonder if the show Wide Receiver on Netflix is bothering Brandon Aiyuk because it's featuring Debo and Kittle.
It might be.
I mean, I would have said before any of this, nah, he's not the kind of guy who cares about this. But this offseason has sort of showed us another side of him. Maybe. I can't help but notice one of the guys featured in Wide Receiver is a tight end. That might piss him off a little. So maybe that's why he's doing his own doc. He's like, man, I can't get on Wide Receiver. I'm going to make another doc called Brandon Aiyuk. They can't leave me off of that one.
I got to think they offered it to Aiyuk and he must have turned it down. I don't know. But maybe not. I mean, Debo's definitely a little bit more of a exciting interview. So maybe it was based on that. Maybe it was based on who's going to give us the best sound bites and that kind of thing. I mean, Brandon's a really good, talented receiver. He's not the greatest soundbite. Maybe that's it.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks for the comments. Keep them rolling in. Hit like and subscribe. Great to have you here. We're getting closer and closer to football. That's a beautiful thing. Larry, take that one down, if you will, please, because it feels like over the 4th of July weekend, something always goes wrong with an athlete somewhere. It's usually like an NFL player because everyone's getting their last yayas out before they hunker down for training camp. But it can come from the NBA. 4th of July weekend is people behaving badly, making bad choices, alcohol's involved, and there's usually a bad story out there. Somebody getting arrested, somebody getting into a fight. Well, we get the worst possible story over the weekend, the saddest story from over the weekend, Larry. Again, there's never a right time to go, but definitely the wrong time to go is when you're a young man at the peak of your potential and about to enter a business, and it's all right there in front of you. The future could not be more in front of a guy like Kyrie Jackson, who was killed over the weekend in a crash in Baltimore. He died with two of his high school teammates in a car crash. He was a 4th-round pick by the Minnesota Vikings. He was a really good college football player. His two buddies who died in the car with him, also, he was only 24 years old. The two other men in the car were also just 24 and 23 years old. I mean, you were on the launching pad of the real part of your life at that age. And what a crying shame. And they were in the car, Larry, that was hit by the other driver. They didn't do anything wrong. They were just driving. It was 3 a.m. They were coming back, but they were hit by the other car involved in this. They weren't the aggressor in the accident. And the whole thing is just as tragic gets. 3 young men, all in their early 20s, one about to embark on an NFL career, and they're all gone. That's just tragic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as somebody who has 4 kids and 3 of them driving, and it won't be long now before I have all 4 of them driving. It's my biggest fear as a parent. And, it's like you say it to them all the time. Hey, drive safely, be careful. What can you say? And then your kids get into cars, and then you got people, playing music and talking and the distractions
texting on your phone, everything.
I mean,
everything.
There's all the different things that go into making driving incredibly dangerous. And then anytime you're out, let's be honest here, anytime you're out after midnight, there's always the risk. And if you're out after 2, the risk is even greater. That you're gonna, the bars close at 2 in California, and you're driving around at 2:30. There's a good chance that somebody on the road has had something to drink. So it's drive defensively, be smart, don't take chances. But it doesn't sound like these guys, this was their issue or somebody else's issue. But 3:14 in the morning, and yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. And it's like, I think of it too. It's like, you've got whether it be somebody who dies in a car crash or, killed on spring break or something like that. I always think of these people that are at college age, and it's like mom and dad spend, they're born, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, you cover up every plug, and you put a little rubber corner on every sharp edge on the wall and on the table, and don't touch this, and don't walk behind the car, and all these instructions.
The entire house.
You child-proof the thing, and then the stairs, and then running behind cars, and all the different things. Don't run away from me in a parking lot, and all these different things that you remind your kids to try to keep them safe. And then they get out in the world. They're whether at spring break, maybe they're going away without their parents on a trip for the very first time, maybe, and or they're at school and they get into a car accident. Or, and it's like it's just awful, just awful.
Yeah.
And look, I pray for the parents, because the parents are the ones that need to be emotionally strong. I mean, that's a lot of don't touch that. Be careful, and
from
the 7 billion of those.
Look, I got 2 little boys. I'm very proud of them, but neither has done anything except bring home like our projects yet. Neither's really accomplished anything in life to point at and be like, look at what I did. It's just, they're just learning. They're little boys. They're both under the age of 5. Can you imagine what it's like to watch one of your sons reach a level of excellence to the point where they're drafted into the NFL, and all the height, the high, the feeling of accomplishment, the feeling of he did his job. We certainly did our job as parents. To go from that before he even plays a game to this, I mean, it's just, again, becoming a parent is powerful medicine. It really is. And it changes the way you think about things and evaluate dangers and risks and all that. And it's just so sad. It's awful. I mean, I almost get a little misty eyed talking about it, because it's to try to put myself into those parents' shoes.
I mean, it's the unthinkable. It's like, but it's like, my thoughts and prayers go out to that family. I mean, it's just
the family of all three of those kids. The other two guys were not drafted into the NFL, but they were young men at the dawn of their lives as well. And it's just all a crying.
Be careful. Be
shame.
careful out there. Be careful. Be careful, especially after 2:00 in the morning. Drive defensively. You hear about it every year, at least in Northern California. People get on the freeway going the wrong way because they're just so wasted, and they take a turn and they're getting off in the on ramp, but they're getting on instead of getting off. And it's just our ROB says nothing good happens after midnight. Great one says they should learn from Henry Ruggs, but it wasn't them.
That's the thing. According to all the stories that I've read, they were not the offenders in this accident. They were the car that got hit. They weren't the car that hit anybody. So
supposedly the drunk driver who it was, the woman lived. That's always incredibly unfair.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's sad. I mean, it's so sad. I mean, I tell my kids, hey, look, it's like, I know because we've been there, right? We've lived it. You go to school, you get a little older, you keep graduating from grade to grade to grade to grade to grade. Then you get to high school. Hey, I'm in high school. Then all of a sudden you get a car and you're driving. Now, hey, I'm on the road. Then you're maybe at college and you're living on your own and you got your own money. And man, life is amazing, man. Like, drive anywhere I want, do anything I want. I'm untouchable. I'm going to live forever. Nothing can beat me. Nothing can slow me down. And then you get a DUI.
Right.
And then you get a traffic accident. You kill somebody. And then you make some terrible mistake and it's a life-altering mistake. It's like, just remember that, you can make life-altering mistakes. And sometimes you get a second. There's certain things you get a second chance at. Some things you don't.
Yeah.
And I always just tell my kids, just like, hey, if you are out and you've had something to drink, don't get behind the wheel. If you are out and somebody you're with has had something to drink, don't get behind the wheel. Don't exacerbate an already bad situation by making it incredibly worse. Call me. I stay up late all the time watching sports. I've done streams with you past midnight. I've been up at 1:00 in the morning talking to people on this, on YouTube. It's like, I'm up. And even if I'm not up, I'll get up and I'll go drive and I'll go pick you up and your stupid drunk friends up. I'll drop them off at home. We don't even have to talk about it again. Just don't make a bad situation worse.
Yeah. One of the greatest gifts my dad ever gave me in high school, when my buddies and I were in the, no one's at drinking age, but you're at drinking choices, and my dad told me, I will come get you, no questions asked, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I'll never get angry at you. Just never get in a car with a drunk driver, ever.
Yeah.
I will
make a deal.
You. And there, I
made that deal with Kev. I mean, you guys know Kev. Kev's part of the show.
Yeah.
I made that deal with Kev. I said, Kev, I love you. I'm not going to try to be like the person who just be like, don't ever drink. Don't ever drive. It's like,
right.
But
the safest sex is no sex at all. Practice abstinence. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the real world. These like, it's like Rick Barry. I'm an NBA coach. I wouldn't let any of my players leave the practice until they made 100 free throws in a row.
Sure.
Right.
Rick.
Yeah, it sounds good, Rick, but I don't know if that's going to work. And so it's like, you gotta have rules. And I just told him, I said, hey, look, if I call you, call me back. That's one of my rules. The other rule is don't make terrible decisions. Call me. And Kev has called me. He's broken down in he was broken down in like Santa Cruz one night with his buddies. They're like, took some old car, it overheated. Now they got a blown hose, it's just a blown radiator hose, but you can't drive with it. He's in Santa Cruz. It's 1:30 in the morning. He's like, Dad, I know you're going to hate me, but we're in Santa Cruz. Our car's down and everybody's been drinking and this. I'm like, give me your address and I'll go. And I'd rather spend an hour on the road. I mean, any parent would rather spend 90 minutes or 2 hours on the road, even if they got to get up early the next morning, than faced with the alternative of my kid got into a car and killed himself, killed somebody, got hurt, somebody else got hurt, damaged property. I mean, come on.
It's a lot easier for me to get you out of a bad situation right now than it is for me to get you out of a drunk tank, out of a jail, out of a hospital, out of legal trouble. Yeah, make good choices, folks.
And if you emphasize this to your kids and your kids are smart, they will adjust. Most of the problems that kids have are like, oh my God, my dad is going to kill me. I'm going to be late. My curfew's 1 a.m. I have to get home. It's like, yeah, but you're wasted. And everybody else at the party's wasted. Call an Uber. I'm not on Uber. You know what I mean? It's like, and then it's like, you know what? Then call somebody who can give you a ride. Almost every team that I ever worked for, we had these cards, Damon, and we would just contract out with, just a town car service. And we would just give everybody, that was one of almost every team I ever worked for. We gave the players and the staff and the coaches and everything, just a card here. We have an account. With blankety blank, luxury, whatever, and they will come pick you up wherever, whenever, no questions asked, and drive you home, and it'll be no cost. And still, guys, get behind the wheel. So it's not about money. Right. It's not about convenience. It's about
it's a feeling
about this. I'm untouchable, and you're not
untouchable. Feeling of invincibility. When you're in your early 20s, you are supposed to feel invincible. That's not going to happen to me. Might happen to the next guy, but not to me.
Right.
And that goes into the psychology of the whole thing. But yeah, every single NFL team, Larry, has every single one of their players walking around with forget about calling Uber or Lyft. You call this number and an off-duty cop who works for us will come and get you. It's usually an off-duty cop. We will send they don't get picked up in a police cruiser. The cop comes and picks them up in their own car. So,
I know guys who coach high school football, Damon, who, it's miles from the NFL, but they'll give their high school kids, hey, I know I'm not your dad. I know I'm not your teacher, but I am your defensive line coach on this football team. And I do care about you guys. And if any of you guys need a ride home, and you don't have a ride home, this is my number. This is my card. Call me. Just something like that. And just kids just need to pump the brakes. Just pump the brakes a little bit, slow down a little bit, a
lot of these guys don't have the support that we had. Yeah. A lot of guys don't have dads patting them on their head saying, I'll come get you in your darkest hour. And so to have coaches who go out of their way and do that, these people are the greatest people in the world, unpaid, unrecognized coaches who just bust their butts to make kids' lives better. Like these are wonderful people. They should all be absolutely saluted and lauded for everything that they do for, they're not just serving a football team. They're serving a community. When you're saying, I'll come and pick you guys up if you got no way of the chance to get home. So,
well, we've all been on the freeway, by the way, and that guy rolls by at like 1:30. And I'm not talking about 1:30 in the morning. I'm talking about 130 miles an hour.
Right.
You're on. I mean, I swear, Damon, I go to every Niner game and I'm coming home late after, because I do a stream right there in the stadium. So I don't get out of there till sometimes, even after a 1 o'clock game, I may not start the show till 5:30 or something like that. I may not get out of there till 7:30, 8 o'clock. By the time I'm getting towards my house, it might be 9 o'clock at night. There invariably will be somebody shooting up 680 at like 150 miles an hour. I mean, maybe not 150, maybe more like 100. But I mean, they'll go by you. And if you didn't see them and you changed lanes at the wrong time, you'd be like, they would rear end you and it would just be fiery mess. So there are people that just go crazy and go super fast. I was just reading about one of the Commanders players who people were saying, Jamin Davis, their linebacker, is one of the guys that they say may get traded by them. He had a deal this year where he was driving like 145 in a 40 zone. 145 in a 40 zone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of young people get behind the wheel and they feel invincible. We all did it. We all drove too fast once or twice. And it's tragic. It's tragic. And now 3 young men are gone. 3 young families are ruined. And it's one of those things too. It's like, I'd never be the same. I'd absolutely never be the same. I could try. I mean, I would try. I would keep doing streams. I would keep, but if I lost a child in some kind of fiery crash like that, way too young, it would haunt my thoughts for the rest of time.
Yeah. How do you have a normal day after that? How do you
always be seeing them and hearing them and reminded of them? And, this would have been their birthday and what they could have been. I mean, it's like, it's the ultimate. I mean, they say like, hey, don't have any regrets. That's the ultimate regret. The ultimate regret is having a child, leave this earth early. And maybe you just never had the opportunity to have the conversation with them. Hey, you know what? Don't ever drink and drive. I will pick you up. There will be no repercussions. Just don't ever do it. Usually it's somebody, I'm afraid mom's gonna be mad. Dad's gonna be mad. Somebody's gonna be mad. And they make a bad situation like worlds worse. So just don't be that person. I mean, I've done stupid, shocker. Larry Krueger has done stupid shit. I've done so many stupid things in my life that I could have been worse if I just didn't, make one kind of like sobering kind of decision. It could have been worse.
Yeah.
So
I've gotten away with things that I probably shouldn't have, coming up. And everyone does. It's how you live in life. If you live to an old age, it's because you probably came this close to meeting your mortality, but for whatever reason, you didn't that night. And that's why you're now an old man, because back in 1986, this thing that could have gone way wrong didn't. And now you're here. You can plan, you can have great parenting, you can live a very conservative, measured life and still be involved in something so random. Enjoy this precious little sliver of life that we all get. It could end at any time. It really, really could. Now, you said, Larry, because we don't want to harp on this any longer.
Yeah, no, we won't.
It's the one real NFL story that, hit over the weekend. There it is. All love to all the families involved there. From the lane of the absurd, Larry, you said you got so if the 49ers actually traded Brock Purdy, what could they get? Somebody wrote that column. Somebody came up
a story by Paul Solano Jr. 18 hours ago.
Okay.
5 trades the 49ers should consider if they don't extend Brock Purdy.
All right.
And it starts off.
Trade number 1, please.
Starts off with the 49ers could trade Brock Purdy if extension isn't signed after 2025. Okay, here we go. Here are the deals.
By the way, needless to say, Tanner Mordecai had a hell of a year, right?
Yeah. Okay. Purdy, by the way, just had an amazing year. 69.4% completion percentage, 4,280 yards, 31 passing touchdowns, 11 picks, 9.6 yards per attempt. Finished 4th in completion percentage, 2nd in passing touchdowns, 3rd or 1st in yards per attempt in the NFL. Okay, so that he had a huge year. Okay, now Purdy cannot sign a contract extension until after the 2024 season. That part we knew because lots of people were like, sign him now, but you can't sign him now. But there's still some time before the 49ers have to decide. If Purdy begins to struggle this season, there's always the possibility that the Niners won't extend him following 2024. Jimmy Garoppolo once flourished under Shanahan's scheme, but continued to regress. It's so hilarious because so many people have, either Kaepernick or Garoppolo syndrome. I thought Garoppolo was good. I put all my trust in Garoppolo. I bought a jersey that had his number, and then he was bad. And they're scarred from it. And it's like, I believed in Kaepernick, and Kaepernick let me down. And so Purdy is going to regress. It's like, probably not, but I do understand.
Hey, you know what? Could happen. Probably not. Everyone around this kid says don't bet on it happening. There is no single data point of didn't like that element of his offseason to really suggest that any of this is going to happen. But okay, for whatever reason, the wheels have fallen off. It is terrible. He had a 12 touchdown, 40 interception season. It's a disaster. Got to get rid of Brock Purdy. What are my options, Paul Solano Jr.?
Here we go. Trade number one, trade Brock to the Cowboys with a 4th-round pick in next year's draft for Dak Prescott and the Cowboys 2025 first and 2026 third. So you get a first and a third and Dak for Brock and a 4th.
Sounds expensive. Let me hear my other options, please. But okay, so that's
actually not a bad trade as far as value, but it's not great.
I feel like the Dallas Cowboys are giving up an awful lot right there. I don't know.
Yeah, it does sound like they are giving up a lot. I still wouldn't want Dak. Okay, here's one. Niners Chargers. Niners send Brock Purdy to the Chargers along with next year's 1st and 3rd round pick and their 2026 2nd-round pick.
Wait a minute. Does Paul Solano Jr. come at this article through the prism of he would have to fit on that team? What has happened to Justin Herbert that has created the need for the Chargers to trade for Brock Purdy here?
Justin Herbert's coming back. Herbert and a 4th and a 6th to the Niners for Purdy, a 1st, a 3rd, and a 2nd. So that this is a Purdy for Herbert trade.
I hate this article so much. Continue. Continue.
Well, okay, so I'll give you the reasoning on this one. Okay, it says if the 49ers wanted to make the splash of the century, a trade for Justin Herbert would be the one. The trade likely wouldn't make sense until after this season. If the 49ers saw Purdy struggle and the Chargers didn't see as much of a need for Herbert in a new run-heavy offense with Greg Roman as the OC, this would likely bring down the trade value of both players, making it much easier for player trades to happen between the Niners and the Chargers. So
there's an ayahuasca trip that has to happen for any of this to become a reality. But okay, all right.
Purdy, a 1st, a 3rd in next year's draft, a 2nd in the following year's draft for Herbert, a 4th and a 6th. Okay, Herbert is sub 500, but he is pretty talented. All right, trade number 3.
By the way, you're getting Purdy, a 1st and a 3rd for Herbert and a 4th.
You're getting Purdy, a 1st and a 3rd in this year's draft and a 2nd in 2026 for Herbert, and then a 4th and a 6th this year.
I mean, if you're the Chargers, you want to make that trade. That's a hell of a trade.
Unless you believe that Herbert's world's better than Purdy, then you would never make that trade. But, I mean, if you
I don't think any of these trades are going to become reality. What's next on the plate of absurdity here?
Okay, then he's got the 49ers sending Brock Purdy to the New York Giants. The Giants get Purdy. The Niners get the Giants' 1st-round pick, 2nd-round pick, and then the next year they would get their 1st-round pick and 4th-round pick. So a 1 and a 2 in 25, a 1 and a 4 in 26. 4 draft choices straight up for Brock Purdy.
I think I'm going to need the Chrysler building as well to throw that in there, but okay. All right.
Now there's a Niners-Raiders proposal. Brock Purdy to the Raiders for Aiden O'Connell from Purdue and the Raiders' 1st-round pick the next 2 years and their 3rd-round pick this year. Aiden O'Connell
never have a quarterback.
Aiden O'Connell, 2 number 1s and a number 3.
As long as I'm covering the 49ers, I have it in the clause of my contract with the team that they can't draft or ever sign a quarterback from Purdue. If the Niners would
part of the
like me
deal.
to continue covering them as a content creator, there can be no starting Purdue quarterback on the roster. We have this deal. Parag and I made it years ago, and he's always honored it. So I'm going to assume he keeps on honoring it.
All right, this is kind of an interesting one. This is Purdy to the Jets. If, the Jets are going all in with Aaron Rodgers in 2024, but they got to think about life beyond Rodgers. So this would be, for when Rodgers retires, but it would be Brock to the Jets. The Niners would get edge rusher Michael Clemens, a 2025 first-round pick, a 2025 second-round pick, and the Jets' 2026 first-round pick. So you're getting 2 1s and a 2 and Michael Clemens for Brock Purdy.
After careful consideration, Larry, I'm rejecting all of these trades, and I'm going to roll with Brock Purdy, I think.
Seriously.
Yeah. I honestly, I can't wait.
They're all bad.
I can't wait to see the season that Brock has. And I'm not going to speak on it with any level of authority as if I've got some ability to predict the future here. But what I think he's done, his starting point, the way he's progressed, his steps forward, I really think that there's an MVP level season coming from this guy. I really think there is. I think
it makes sense.
Everybody go, holy shit, Brock Purdy, huh?
Really? Look what he did. Look what he did this last year, coming off of no reps on the field with his receivers, no real work in the offseason. Everything's about rehab. This year, he has no rehab. He's in year 3 in the system. He's had the entire offseason to lead the offseason, workouts. Supposedly, he's done exactly that. I asked him a question about Jacob Cowing a month ago, and just by his answer and how detailed he was about his answer about Cowing's route running and what he thinks of him, it was pretty obvious to me that he's repped, a lot of reps with Cowing. And then watching this last mini camp, it was really clear watching Purdy to Pearsall that those guys have clearly spent a lot of time on the field repping it. So there's already a chemistry there. So I don't know. Personally, I think, there were a lot of people that wanted to tell us that Brock Purdy couldn't improve coming off of his rookie year. And then he somehow did, despite the fact he was coming off major surgery. Now he's not coming off major surgery. He's led a team to the Super Bowl. He's the unquestioned leader and is running this offseason program, but he's not going to get any better. I think he's going to get, I would say what makes sense would be like maybe 15 to 20% better. And that's going to be enough to be in the MVP race. So, yeah, I think absolutely Brock has a big year.
I'm excited for it. I love talking football. I do. I love flapping my gums into the wind, just jawing about football, but I'm ready for some football. I'm ready for it to be back. I feel like this hasn't it been an extra long off season? Is it just me or does it feel that way to you too?
Well, it's so funny because the other day I watched the first edition of the HBO Hard Knocks on the New York Giants, and they're doing like 3 different versions. There's like an in-season version. There's like a training camp version. This was like
right, and then the Bears are actually the hard knock that you're the hard knocks.
I think the Bears are the hard knocks for the summer for the training camp version. So that's going to start in a few weeks. But like they did one on the Giants for the draft and the free agency, and it was really good. It was really good. And it's funny, Michael Lombardi's already writing these articles and, Joe Shane, did this wrong and that wrong. And it's like, why? Because he said that he was moving on from Saquon Barkley. But I thought it was really interesting. I just watched it the other night and I thought it was incredibly well done. Incredibly well done. I'm a big fan of Hard Knocks, and the one that they just did with the Giants I thought was really good. I can't wait to see the one with the Bears. I believe is it Chargers or somebody else in season. I forget who the third, might be Colts. I forget who that third team is, but there's one in season, there's one in the preseason, and there's one in the off season. And the one in the off season just had the first edition of it last Tuesday, and this Tuesday will be the second edition. I think it's a 4-parter or 5-parter, but awesome. I mean, really great stuff. If you're into the draft, if you're into free agency, if you're into how do these decisions get made behind the scenes, man, you're going to love Hard Knocks because they really take you behind the scenes and you get the discussions between Wellington Mara and between Joe Shane and Brian Dable with their scouts, with their,
The only thing that I don't
a lot
like
of good
about
stuff
Hard
there.
Knocks is that the teams now have final say over edits, which means they can take out all the really good and interesting stuff, and the team has the final cut. I don't like that about it, which, it totally takes the notion of this is a documentary away from it. But at the same time, it is always interesting. And having any access to an NFL war room. I mean, God, I remember, Larry, when we were down there at 4949, Plaza, Centennial Boulevard, whatever the address of the headquarters is there, when we were going in to cover an NFL draft, like they had an armed guard at the beginning of the hallway, which at the end of the hallway was the war room. Like you weren't even allowed to walk in the hallway that the war room was off of. Like that's how secretive and secure these war rooms are. So for the Giants to let a camera crew in there and show it to you after the fact, even, okay, maybe I will watch it because I've been out on Hard Knocks ever since frickin' Antonio Brown was cryo freezing his feet with the Lakers or with the Raiders, and they were trying to pretend that, a rookie calling salmon, do you pronounce the L? Like that, it was awful. Like the Raiders ruined Hard Knocks for me forever.
Yeah, well, and the Raiders refused to show anything. I mean, that was like, why do it?
Yeah. So I kind of stepped away from the series after that point. I haven't really stepped back to it. Now, obviously, with the Bears being the Hard Knocks team this year, I'll be all over that, having grown up a Bears fan. But now, okay, so you got me curious now. Now I'm Giants Hard Knocks curious, Larry. You got me. I will watch.
Oh, it's good. It's really good. It's really good. And Joe Shane looks like about 12 years old. He's like, I haven't skipped any steps. I was the Panthers, blah, blah, blah. And then I was this. It's like, yeah, but something tells me, how did you become a Panthers scout at like 20? You know what I mean? It was like, something like that. It was like, I'd love to know. I bet you if you chased it back, there's some family member, there's some nepotism, there's something that got him to be the Carolina Panthers, scouting director that started him on his path. Now, I'm not saying that he didn't, fight his way up legitimately. I'm sure he did.
Hey, look, nepotism will get you the job in sports. It won't keep you there.
Right. But I mean, so, and it's interesting because the New York Giants are, they're a historic franchise. They're very important. They've got a huge audience. The league would love nothing better than for the New York Giants to, get off the canvas and be good again. And yet, I mean, they don't have a quarterback. And they've been doing this dance with Daniel Jones for 5 years. And they're like, well, maybe if we just what? I mean, the guy turns the ball over at a record rate. He fumbles it a ton. He throws tons of picks. Last year they had a brief flirtation with Tommy DeVito. Look, now they brought in Drew Lock. I mean,
he is a better athlete than anyone could even imagine. Like
he's Alex Smith,
a hell of an athlete, but what he's not he's not a very good quarterback.
Yeah,
and that's the problem.
Yeah. He turns it over.
Yeah,
all the time. I mean, all the time. But yeah, so, but it is interesting. If you're somebody who likes personnel and likes free agency, likes the NFL, likes the draft, you would love this version of Hard Knocks with the Giants because it focuses on Joe Shane, it focuses on the off season, and it is really interesting. And of course, they drafted Malik Neighbors with the first pick with their 6th pick overall in round 1.
Wasn't Malik Neighbors just throwing around crazy cash at a strip club?
Something like that.
Somewhere.
Yeah. I would
not
be totally shocked by that. But
again,
he's a hell of a receiver. I'd love to have him on my team.
If they're all ones, it's not as much cash as you'd think. It's just a couple of $100.
Yeah. It looks like a lot.
It looks like a lot. It looks good. So there you go. Have you got any more NFL news? Is there anything that we didn't get to from the NFL over the weekend since we last talked on Friday, Larry, that needs to be a part of today's show? Because if not, we got a little Major League All-Stars to talk about.
We do have one more thing on the Commanders and Aiyuk.
Oh boy.
And let me see here. Yeah, they gave Cody Benjamin wrote a story. Brandon Aiyuk trade rumors, 3 proposed deals as the Niners wide receiver teases interest in the Commanders. So I'll just throw them to you quickly. So the first trade is Aiyuk to the Commanders, and the Niners get their first round pick next year. I don't think that's a starter. I don't think the Niners can do that. They're inside your Super Bowl window. You can't just trade for a pick.
Right. You need snaps coming back. You need snaps in 2024 coming back in this trade.
Something significant coming back this year has got to be it. I mean, otherwise, what do you do?
First round draft pick is significant, though.
Yeah, but that's not this year.
Right.
It's next year. So, I mean, I agree. If you can get the first, I mean, the only thing that would make me want to go for a pick is if a bad team like New England was willing to throw a first round pick in next year's draft unprotected. If you want to throw me your unprotected first, and you're Carolina or New England, and I think you're probably going to be a top 5 pick, yeah, I would do it. I would do it and roll the dice this year, even without Aiyuk. So that's number one. Number 2 is Commanders get Aiyuk. The Niners get a wide receiver named Diami Brown and a 2025 second and fourth. Don't love that either. And proposal number 3 is a 3-way deal. Broncos, Commanders, Niners. Broncos get Jamison Crowder from Washington and Washington's 2025 third. Commanders get Aiyuk, and the Niners get Cortland Sutton and Washington's 2025 second. That's probably the best deal of the 3.
Yes, without a doubt.
Yeah, I'd do that deal. I would trade Aiyuk for Cortland Sutton in a second round pick. Just if Aiyuk's just, he's hell bent on leaving. He's emotionally already a Commander. If that is indeed the case, I would do that.
By the way, I just want to see the numbers on here. You get a big player in Cortland Sutton. He's 6'4".
Yeah.
He had 59 catches, money. 59 catches, 772 yards, 13 average yards per catch, 10 touchdowns. 10 touchdowns. I would be interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd be more interested in Patrick Surtain. If the Denver Broncos are involved, Surtain would be the player that I'd like to see coming back in a Niners uniform.
I would too. And I would also sweeten that deal and offer them, because the Niners have about 5 different young corners right now, right? Between Womack and Green and Luter and Ambry. And I would see if I could, throw them a young corner and get Surtain as part of that deal, or throw them a young corner in some kind of a draft pick of our own. Trying to get Surtain. Yeah. To me, especially after watching Snead and McDuffie in the Super Bowl, man, if you could, you got Mooney, you got Lenore, man, if you could get another great cover corner guy, man, that could be the difference.
Ship
Absolutely
it.
Could be the difference.
I'll do that trade right now. Ship it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's all we have on the Niner front. There's a couple. I've got one Warrior topic and one Giant topic.
Start away. Which direction you want to go in first?
Well, let's go with the Warriors. The Warriors, there was an awful lot. They made a big push to try to get Lauri Markkanen. And since at this point, it hasn't happened. Now there's speculation that other teams are interested in, and maybe he'll sign long-term to stay in Utah. So the Warriors may have to pivot to somebody else. And they're thinking maybe Brandon Ingram, Zach LaVine. Those are the names that I've heard thrown out there. This was a story by a guy named Colin Loring, who says he's got a Wiggins trade here. And I'm very eager to move Wiggins. This one's interesting to me. This is a Warriors trade with Brooklyn. Brooklyn would get Andrew Wiggins, Kevon Looney, Moses Moody, the Warriors' first-round pick in 2026, and a second-round pick in 2028. And the Warriors would get back Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith. Johnson's a career 39% three-point shooter, coming off his 5th NBA season, second in Brooklyn. He averaged 13, 4, and 2 in 58 regular season games. Wiggins is only 2 years removed from being an all-star. He's only 29. He had an average a career worst, though, 13 points a game this last year. Shot 45% from the field, 35% from three, 75% from the line. But I'll say this. I mean, I would do that trade. I like Cam Johnson. I'm a big Cam Johnson fan. I think he would be they just got rid of Steph Curry. If you're looking for just a dead-eye shooter who can get his shot off, Cam Johnson, I think, would be nice. 6'8". I think that would make sense.
Well, and look, I remember, what was it, Dorian Finney-Smith.
He's not bad either. He's a 9-year vet, average 8 points, 4 rebounds, 1.6 assists.
I remember him playing.
He's a good defender, too.
I remember him playing really well 2 years ago in the Dallas Mavericks run to the Western Conference Finals where the Warriors bounced them. Like, Dorian Finney-Smith had a good playoff run. Now I've kind of lost track of him. My Dorian Finney-Smith tracker and update is not set to my phone to ding anytime Dorian checks in a game.
He's played well. He's a career 35% three-point shooter, and he's considered a really good perimeter defender. And, you already added 3-and-D players like DeAnthony Melton and Kyle Anderson. This would be another 3-and-D type player. I'd make that trade.
No matter what the Warriors do, Larry, whether it's Lauri Markkanen or the man on the moon or no trade is consummated and your team is on the floor, the Warriors are going to have to embrace the notion of 82 games of defensive effort to do anything this upcoming year. They're going to have to be a defense first, second, and third basketball team all the time, not some of the time. They also can't piss away a single. Steph went for 38 tonight. They need to win all of those games. And Draymond Green, I keep on saying, like, well, Draymond is, they should have gotten rid of him. Actually, look, Draymond Green has more responsibility to help this team be a winner again than maybe anybody else on this roster, not named Steph Curry. That's for sure. Draymond Green has to be the barking free safety at all times and just the director of all defensive excellence on the basketball court whenever he's out there. He has to be. He can't get suspended. He can't disappear for 20 games for buffoonery. He needs to be out there preaching defense to everybody on this roster, up and down this roster, all regular season long. There's only like 6 NBA teams that play defense in the regular season anyway. The Warriors need to be one of them. They're not getting there without it. They don't have the talent to just roll the ball out and see what happens.
Well, they don't have, unless they can get Markkanen or some significant piece, they're not a title contender. They're not to me, subtracting Chris Paul and Klay Thompson, adding Slow-Mo and Melton and Heald does not make you a playoff team.
It's not bad. It's
not bad, but it doesn't make you a playoff team.
Last year. Yeah.
It's net neutral. You're net neutral. If you could get a Markkanen, now you got a chance to make jump into the top 4 or 5. Now you got a chance to, potentially do something.
The only other shot, again, that you would have if nothing happens is you pray to whatever God you pray to, that everything I just said about defense becomes gospel at Chase Center. And the steps forward of Podziemski and Trace Jackson Davis are so significant. No one can deny them, in their place in the young up and coming conversation of young talent in the league. Like, Trace Jackson Davis, Podziemski, and a whole lot of defense are the only shot the Warriors got, unless something dramatic happens.
Yeah, they just need they need at least one more big time player before they're realistically they're.
Well, look, if they don't have it on opening night, doesn't mean it might not happen during the season. Like, I'm not ready to pull the, oh no, Warriors are done fire alarm until I see them get going and to see how the future, sorts of plays out a little bit. They're going to have a handful of months to figure out what they got. And, every 6 weeks, there's a new NBA player demanding a trade, wanting out, looking to change addresses, and maybe the Warriors take advantage of that in the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, if they could somehow get a big time player like a Markkanen, they're also in the deal flow for Brandon Ingram. If they could wind up with Ingram, he could be a nice fit for them as well. There's a lot of talk that New Orleans is going to try to get Markkanen. So maybe if the Warriors could hang in that deal flow and get into a 3-way deal and get Brandon Ingram. Ingram might not be bad, but they need a significant addition to get from net neutral to title contender. It's not going to be easy.
Do you see what Curry revealed? He's in Vegas. They're filming all their pre-Olympic run-up. Curry admitted that he does want to be a career warrior. First of all, I loved that the first minute he was allowed to touch a microphone and talk about it, Steve Kerr thanked Klay Thompson for all the years and all the memories and talked about what an absence it's going to be. Kerr is a class act through and through. Steph Curry has basically said all the same things about his former teammate, Klay Thompson. Love the guy. It's going to be weird not playing with him. We wish him the very, very best. He also said that he wants to be a career warrior. Like he wants to be visiting Bay Area high schools with his daughter, who will be the first of high school age in his family. And like, he doesn't see himself in another uniform. He also, left the door open for NBA business does happen around these desires, but he really does seem like the guy who knows that there's nothing more valuable out there for him in terms of chasing another ring in another uniform that will mean more to his legacy than just being a career Golden State Warrior. And it sounds like he's content in that, and that's good. The other thing that Curry admitted is that he can't spin a basketball on his finger. The Harlem.
But then he did it. Then he did it.
He did it for like a millisecond. He can't really he can't get it going and then sit here and talk to you. Like he's got to be concentrating, focused on just trying to keep it. Like it's so funny that a guy who has lived his entire life with a basketball in his hand can't do that. Also, Tyrese Halliburton can't do that. And Joel Embiid can't do it either. Can't spin a basketball. And I can't spin a basketball either, but I did once have a Harlem Globetrotter in studio with me. He just said, put up a finger. And I put up a finger and he got a ball spinning and he put it on my finger and that son of a bitch stayed and spun. I'm like, how did you do that? He's like, man, I'm a Harlem Globetrotter. I do magical shit with a basketball every day. It was great.
It's not something that you would, it's a trick thing. It's not there is nothing in basketball that says, okay, this is the part of the game where you spin the ball on your finger. I mean, it's truly for fun. So Steph's never, I was surprised because he's a magician. You would think just from dribbling it around a lot, just from having it in your hands a lot, you'd be able to do that. But what can you say? He can't do it. Can't spin the basketball. The Klay Thompson thing is so interesting from the standpoint of everybody's like happy for Klay that he's moving on. Everybody like understands why he's moving on, but it's like it's just a kind of a weird thing. It's like nobody at all is saying the truth, which is this guy made a terrible decision. He was offered $48 million, $24 million a year. He turned it down and he wound up taking $16 million a year. And it's like I don't know. It's just a very, very, the whole situation's very weird. It's like I'm passionate. We're determined or whatever. We're desperate to get Klay back. And Kerr said the same thing. And yet he didn't come back, so, and then he didn't go play for LA and let his dad watch him. He went to the Mavericks. And is he really going to win with the Mavericks? I mean, I don't know. I don't think
the Dallas Mavericks were just in the NBA Finals, so I'll give them that. They're more ready to win than the Lakers certainly are.
Maybe.
I've read an article where it says that just the cost of living in Dallas from a state tax standpoint to a square footage standpoint, that the money kind of comes out even in the wash. So taking less money in Dallas still has Klay taking more home with him than taking more money to stay here in California, which as a California taxpayer, okay, I can see how that's true. And what I think is the underlying current of truth in all of this is Klay was just done. Klay was ready to move on. I think Klay was tired of Steve Kerr, thinking about what am I going to do with this guy now? Can't quite use him the same. He felt a little different. I think he also realized that if I stay here, I will be the target of criticism until it's over. But if I go somewhere else, I will be the nugget of new toy optimism that certainly is not available to me if I stay here. And I just think that, the carefree, happy-go-lucky Klay Thompson was a bit over-exaggerated in these last 2 years. I think these injuries and the comeback have done an awful lot to Klay's, I don't want to say self-confidence, but just how he thinks about things. I think Klay went through an incredibly traumatic moment in his career and came out with a different mindset. And that different mindset didn't fit the Warriors as well as it did before the injuries. And I just think it was time. 13 years, Larry. That might as well be 50 years in sports years. Like we were converting dog years to human years. 13 years with one team. It's basically unheard of in modern sports. So,
I liked his goodbye. He's like, don't be disappointed it's over. Be happy that it happened or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It was a weird, Klay Thompson's kind of a weird cat. It's like he was the easiest teammate on the way up, but he was probably the most difficult on the way down. Who nobody could see that coming. And that's the way it kind of shook out. But that's, he just had a hard time coming to grips with his NBA mortality. And he's just not nearly the player that he was anymore. So there was a heaviness because around him at all times, because he couldn't cope with it. And you could see he couldn't cope with it. And all the people around him, like Steph and Kerr, they tried everything in their power to help him cope with it. And he just couldn't deal with it. So it's probably best he just moves on.
Yeah,
but
I think so.
It is kind of weird, though. It is kind of weird because, it's like you love the Bay, the people there love you. Now you're going to move to Texas. You were going to move to Texas and play for a team that had a good year this year, but they're not like some automatic going to the finals team. I don't know. We'll see.
Well,
we'll
look,
see.
Here's what Texas now offers. Texas is offering you, the Dallas Mavericks are, I guess, 3 future Hall of Famers. Klay left the combination of 3 future Hall of Famers to go to 3 future Hall of Famers. Luka's going to be a Hall of Famer. Kyrie's going to be a Hall of Famer. And Klay Thompson's going to be a Hall of Famer. So we'll see. We'll see what they got. I think it's going to be interesting to see if he really is a difference-making player for them, or if his I scored 17 but gave up an easy 12, 14 going the other way that I used to not give up. So it really kind of all gets lost in the what. Will he have a big impact or have little impact on the Mavericks? I can't wait to watch the year coming up and find out. And I also think that Klay's production can be replaced by the guys that they've added. So the Warriors are kind of in a weird way the same, even though they've lost such a valuable piece of their franchise. And we'll see if they get even better beyond that. And we've already had that conversation. Couple of other things. I've always liked DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan's got that old man game where he's hitting mid-rangers in your eye, and he'll hit like 30 of them in a row. I mean, this guy, when he's feeling it from the floor, he's fantastic. DeRozan to the Kings, I see critics going, well, that doesn't mean title. Well, what in Sacramento ever meant player X now means title? That's not how the Kings operate. They'd like to pretend that they're that team, but they're not a team that is, we can't be happy without a title. Well, that means you've never been happy, not once. I think DeRozan's interesting. I think that's a good makeup. I also really like, Larry, the fact that Harrison Barnes is heading to San Antonio, because Harrison Barnes, as an actual on-court difference maker, I don't know how much is left. Harrison Barnes, the diplomat. Harrison Barnes, the let me show everybody on this team how to be a pro. He is state of the art in that category. When it comes to dealing with media, when it comes to dealing with fans, when it comes to dealing with teammates, when it comes to dealing with NBA business. And Chris Paul is now in that room in San Antonio. Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes are going to be perfect mentors for Victor Wembanyama. And if Victor Wembanyama was going to be the best player in the NBA 4 years from now, I'm moving that up a full year. He is 3 years away from being the best player on planet Earth with these two guys in his ear every day, along with Greg Popovich. That's a good move for Victor Wembanyama. I don't know how good of a move it is for Harrison Barnes or Chris Paul, but he's lucky to have those guys as vets.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw the standing ovation that DeRozan got yesterday in the Sacramento Summer League.
I did.
He walks into the arena and people just went absolutely bananas. Good trade for Sacramento. I mean, it gives them DeRozan, who's probably the best intermediate mid-range guy in the league, and then they've got Fox and they've got Sabonis. So now they got a three-headed monster there. And they didn't really trade that much. I mean, I think it's a good get. I mean, so the trade sends DeMar DeRozan via sign and trade to the Kings. The Spurs get Harrison Barnes and a 2031 first-round pick swap with Sacramento. And the Bulls wind up getting Chris Duarte and 2 second-round picks for their efforts being involved in the deal. So, I mean, the Bulls are trying to get younger and cut some salary. Sacramento's just trying to see if they can get something going and maybe get to a conference finals. They may be able to do it. We'll see. DeRozan, Fox, and Sabonis is not a bad little trio. So I'm happy for Sacramento. It gives them, now the window's short because, I mean, DeRozan's 34, 35 already, but he's in great shape. He's playing incredible basketball right now. And they get the best player in the trade, and they probably get him for the next couple of years. So, we'll see. I like it from Sacramento's perspective. Sure.
I do too. The only little bit of baseball news, Larry. I'm coming up on my show at 11 a.m. this morning. My thumbnail's already out there. It's got a picture of Ramos on it, and it's called the Accidental All-Star, because I'm not even sure this was in the Giants' plans. If Farhan had his druthers, nobody gets hurt to even create the space for Ramos to be up here by now. It's like he had the entire organization working against him almost, and he fought his way through and became an all-star, which is impressive. Logan Webb, who absolutely could have been an all-star last year, but wasn't. He gets his first nod too. The Giants are sending 2 to the game. The A's are sending Mason Miller to the game. He's been unbelievable in the 9th inning. Rooker maybe got screwed a little bit for the A's, but screwing over the A's is kind of what Major League Baseball does. But there you go. You got 3 all-stars from the Bay: Ramos, Webb, and Miller. Exciting times, Larry. Exciting times.
Well, I mean, Ramos this is a great story. This guy, I did an interview with him last year before spring training, and I said, how do you feel about where you're at? And he's like, I still need to prove that I can conquer AAA. Then he went out and had a bad year in AAA. And that was the beginning. And then this year came back, didn't make the team again, was the first cut in spring training, but then went down to the minors and got it going. And only got called up. You got the feeling, at least, because the Giants had overwhelming injuries. If without their injuries, he probably never gets called up. And what does he become? He becomes their all-star. And he's a true 5-tool guy. I mean, he's playing center field. He's hitting the ball hard to the opposite field. He's got a tremendous throwing arm. He can play center. He's got power. He's got speed. I mean, this is an enormously talented guy. And all I can say as a Giants fan is I feel somewhat lucky that Farhan didn't peddle this guy, because I guarantee you that there were opportunities to do exactly that, to trade him, to throw him in here or there. Farhan's made so many maneuvers. I got to think there's been more than a handful of teams that have looked at the power and speed potential and Elliot Ramos and said, we'll take Elliot Ramos. And the Giants didn't make that move. So credit Farhan for keeping.
He's a Bobby Evans guy. Right? He was drafted on Evans's watch. It was another one of those.
Evans, yeah.
one of those reasons why he might have been included, but didn't. Okay, so if we're going to give Farhan all the praise in the world for not trading him, sure. I'm glad that he actually decided to play him, or I'm glad the opportunity to play actually happened. The other thing with the Giants that, again, is roster specific, a lot of people probably don't even know this because late Sunday night, they made a trade with the Cincinnati Reds. The Giants get left-handed pitcher Alex Young, who, by the way, was a Giant in 2022, had a pretty good year out of the bullpen, too. He's 6'3", 30 years old, and he has already been sent to AAA because Blake Snell is supposed to be coming up and starting
Tonight.
Tuesday's game, Wednesday's game.
Tomorrow.
Blake Snell is back in the mix. Okay, great. Or maybe not. We'll find out. But goodbye, Austin Slater, and cash considerations. Austin Slater, who's actually had like the best couple of weeks of at-bats we've seen out of him in a while, played himself into getting on the Reds' radar and being enough to get this trade done. What was surprising, Larry, this is just how fast time goes in sports. Did you know that Austin Slater was the longest tenured San Francisco Giant?
Yeah. Well, he'd been around a long time. Yeah. He'd been around a long time.
He's been in their system for 10 years.
And Alex Young is just a guy. I mean, he's just a hash slinging lefty, doesn't throw hard.
Right.
And Cincinnati gets cash back as part of the deal. Slater's 31. He's been, Giants drafted him out of Stanford, 8th round pick in the 2014 draft.
Right.
And didn't make his major league debut until he was 24 in 2017. Part-time player for the most part, became a pretty good defensive player. He came up as a second baseman, wasn't a good second baseman. They tried to play him at first, at third, didn't really take to it, played him in the corner outfield a little bit. Then, did a decent job in center field at times defensively, but he just was never truly a natural center fielder. Now they got Elliot Ramos and they got Luis Matos. They also have guys like Grant McCray and Hunter Bishop that are on the verge. There's also speculation that the Marlins are getting close to pulling the trigger on a trade that would send Jazz Chisholm elsewhere. And the Giants are one of the teams that has been speculated as a new home for Chisholm, who's having a great year at the plate. He's hitting, he's 26. He's got 10 home runs, 17 steals. So he's played pretty well. So he's got tools. He can play second. He can play the outfield. Very versatile. And then there's a whole slew of other outfielders that are supposedly going to be available, including Cody Bellinger and others between now and the trade deadline. And I think the Giants just looked around and just said, hey, look, we've got Matos, we got Ramos, we've got some guys coming through the system who we believe in. And then there's trade possibilities, and all these guys are better options than Slater. They tried to get, they did everything in their power to get Slater going. Every time they played this guy, despite the fact that he was hitting like 100, they let him off or hit him at the top of the lineup. They did everything they possibly could to try to get his bat rolling. And it just, he would get hurt.
The production would dip. Something always went wrong for the guy. A little bit star-crossed. Good luck.
He's not that good. At the end of the day, he's not. He's been in the big league since 2017. It's now 2024. So by now we got a pretty good idea what he is. He's never hit 20 home runs. He's never stolen 20 bases. He's never hit 300. He's a converted second baseman who's decent in center, but
he's never seen a ballpark as friendly to hitters as Cincinnati's. So maybe that'll change his prospects or offensive production a little bit. Maybe. Certainly, 24 Willie Mays Plaza gobbles up a lot of balls that would be home runs anywhere else. So we'll see. He
needed a change of scenery.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's probably good for everyone. And it made me laugh a little bit in the chat. Guy named Rob, capital R, small case O, capital B. Any Giant trade should be accompanied with a bye, Salinas.
Bye-bye, Salinas.
Bye-bye, Salinas. Yeah, there you go. Radnich forever. You can't go anywhere. So there you go. I think that is the show today. Good show, Larry. What do you got cooking this week? I know that I'm going to be, I think, doing a little something with Cyrus on Wednesday this week. We're going to kind of put a final touch on what the NBA's little summer league kind of has looked like here. I know Olympic, ramping up is happening. Olympics will be starting soon. So Cyrus is coming on this week. I'm working on a few other guests and things for the show, but pretty standard operating procedure over here on the Plus. What do you got coming up this week?
Well, yeah, a lot of the same stuff. I mean, I'll be talking tomorrow with Cy, I believe. I think Tuesday we're going to do a little something with Cyrus. The great Raj will be in the house Tuesday night.
Dr. Raj.
Dr. Raj with the doctorate. Kev remains, gallivanting through Europe. So,
where is he right now? Where did he go? Did he just do Paris, or is he doing like
Paris? He did Barcelona. I think he might be in Barcelona now. I think he's in Barcelona. And then he's so he's there for another few weeks. I think he's been gone for about a week or so, week and a half. Anyway, he'll remain out, so we won't do our Wednesday night show. And then Wednesday I'll be back with you. Friday I'll be back with you. Thursday night Dieter will be in the house. Saturday the coach will be in the house. We'll be doing a lot of videos. I'm doing a new series on some of the new players that will be showing up in 49er camp. A little preview of that. And then
you're a football guy.
I'm a football guy, but also this week, there's the baseball amateur draft.
And I'm actually hoping that the Giants get this first baseman from Wake Forest, who looks an awful lot like Freddie Freeman. Guy looks really, really good. So
where are the Giants picking?
13. They picked 13 overall. Okay. So they're, this kid supposedly, may go 4 to the A's, but he also may fall out of the top 10. And if he falls to 13, they're saying the Wake Forest first baseman could be a 49er or could be a Giant. And that would be interesting. That would be an interesting get for the Giants. His name's Nick Kurtz. He's a 6'5", 235-pound first baseman from Wake, who's just got a great batting eye, major power, left-handed hitter, foul pole to foul pole type power, all-state player. So tremendous player in high school, tremendous player in college. Anyway, Nick Kurtz is his name. They're saying he may go 13 to
the only other player I've heard linked to the Giants is Ken Caminiti's nephew.
Cousin. Yeah, no, it's his cousin, I believe. Yeah, Cam Caminiti, who's changed his class designation. So he's supposed to be a junior. So he's even a year younger. He's a left-handed pitcher who throws 98. He's also a two-way player, so he hits as well. But they think he's more of a pitcher than a hitter. But he may be the best high school pitcher. So do the Giants go high school pitcher? Do they go college position player?
Oh, go ahead. Look at it this way. If you can go get Shohei Caminiti, you do it.
Yeah, I mean, this kid's really, really great. There's no question. But this guy Kurtz is he looks kind of like Jim Tomei. He's kind of like a cross between Freddie Freeman and Jim Tomei with an incredible batting eye and major, major power. So a guy like Kurtz might be up in a year. This guy could be he's a Wake Forest first baseman who could probably step right out of the draft and maybe into like high A or double A. So, I mean, you could be looking at a guy like Kurtz in San Francisco as soon as next year. So he's a guy to watch for, but I'll do a little amateur draft late in the week, maybe some Warrior videos if they actually make a trade, but we'll focus a little bit on the countdown to training camp, and some live streams. And I got some other things planned as well this week. Trying to hook up with Patrick Willis, because Patrick is going to the Hall of Fame in a couple weeks, and he's one of the guys that I really would like to talk to before the Hall of Fame. So if maybe
Wake Up. How about Wake Up with Willis?
We can. I'm efforting for Patrick Willis.
Is he a morning guy? Does he want to be on early?
I don't know. I gotta figure out the connection to get Patrick Willis on the show. We do have a couple starred chats.
Oh, goody.
We got this one. Samuel Rosario says, Larry, you were You were the only one who liked Ramos last few years. I saw on Twitter and your videos. I don't know if I was the only one who liked Ramos, but I was definitely a believer in Ramos. I'm old. Greg says, dudes, F, Mary, kill, Troy A, Joe B, Skip B.
Is that Troy Aikman, Joe Burrow, Skip Bayless?
Joe Buck, maybe? F, dudes, F, Mary, kill. I don't.
Troy Aikman. How about this? I don't want to sleep with any of them. I don't want to kill any of them. I don't want to marry any of them.
Oh. F, Mary, or kill.
Yeah.
He's like, F, Troy Aikman, marry Joe Buck.
No, he's asking you, where would you be in the three?
Question mark there. I don't want to F any man, marry any man, or kill any man. So
I don't either.
Takes me out of it.
But if I had to, if I had to fuck Troy Aikman, maybe I would. I don't know.
I don't know. God. Anthony says only leverage Aiyuk has. He holds out and the team starts 0-3 without him, just like Emmitt Smith's hold out in the 90s with the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. Now, if you can get Charles Haley to sit there and say, get him signed, maybe Jed would wet his pants and say, I better do it.
Get him signed. Get it done. Get him in the Miata. Go have a car trip. Get it done.
Go to a meat cheese. Get those lemon pepper wings. All right, that's going to do it for us. Have a great Monday. Damon's at 11. Are you with Cy today at 11?
No, I think we're doing that on Wednesday. In the meantime, bye, Salinas.
So, okay, so you're not teasing anybody at 11. You're just talking more.
It's Damon Bruce, a one-man army.
One-man army. All right, that does it. That does it for us. Thanks to Damon. Thanks to all of you guys. Have a great rest of your Monday. Try to beat the heat. Peace.